Here they are, Fred Johnson, flying around, leading the team in tackles and whatnot.
Let's hear a little bit more about South Carolina State, Dave. If we could get cut number 21. Clayton White yesterday, in talking to the media, gave his assessment of the Bulldogs ahead of this weekend's matchup.
Yep, I would say first starting off with their coach. I think their coach presents, he's someone that's, obviously well respected in the game in regards just to being a disciplined coach, a very physical-minded coach. They're a winning program, great tradition. I think they're running a 2 quarterback systems with Atkins and Stubblefield. Those guys are, one, they bring 2 different things. One came from JMU. The other guy is kind of very athletic. I do think they do have 3 wide receivers that are 6'3" and above, 1 6'4", 1 6'5", so that can present problems for any defense. The offensive line is very strong, big dudes, all over 320, strong guys, and I think the tight end's a former converted wide receiver. So the running backs are good. They have a true freshman, number 6, who's kind of a scat back. So they have athletes. They're fast. They're big. But they definitely, you have to respect your opponent at all times. I do think they have the right mindset, and they play hard and they win.
And you got to give a lot of credit to Chinnis Berry, who, of course, was at Benedict just before taking over at SC State. And he is taking over for a legend in Buddy Pugh that obviously had so much success, was there for a long time at SC State, and kind of in a similar type of vein to what Kalen DeBoer was doing at Alabama. Following a guy that has such a great reputation at a school is a very hard thing to do. But in year number 1, Chinnis Berry took him to the Celebration Bowl. They did come up a little bit short on that one, but still went 9-3 overall. Perfect in conference play, and they're bringing a lot of momentum into the season. 1-0 after beating Wofford last week. And again, Carolina shouldn't have a problem, with these guys just because of the disparity of what you have between the 2 rosters. But there's no doubt at that level, this is a very good team.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Sometimes when you kick down to these FCS teams, they might not have the size or speed, as some of the teams that you're going to see in the SEC. But, credit to SC State. They do have the size, the speed. And then Chinnis Berry, doing the things that Buddy Pugh did too, like focusing on the little things and continuing momentum with this program.
He did mention there the 2 quarterback system. They have Billy Atkins, the 4th, at Ryan Stubblefield, who will split work at the quarterback spot like they did last week against Vanderbilt. And we were talking to Ernest Robinson, and I'll replay that conversation coming up in the 1 o'clock hour a little bit earlier on this morning. And, it's kind of both these guys are very capable, and we're likely going to see both these guys coming up on Saturday night as nobody's really kind of set themselves apart in that quarterback room. And, hey, that could be something that could be a challenge. Preparing for 1 quarterback is tough enough. Preparing for 2 can certainly be a challenge, and hopefully that's something that, and I know that's something that obviously Clayton White and his defensive staff have been honing in on a lot this week.
Yeah, you have to be disciplined, especially defensively. Sometimes if you go into, some of these tune-up weeks, you can, get undisciplined and, get complacent. This defense has to bring the ferocity that it, brought in week 1 and tune up on some of the things, and, plenty of room to do that against SC State.
And I think this kind of week is probably one of the most challenging one coach-wise, because you have to keep your players locked in and focused, right? And look, when we hear from the guys earlier on this week or hear from these guys after the game on Saturday, they're going to talk about, hey, we respect SC State. We took them seriously, treated this like any other game. But come on, it wasn't all that long ago that you and I were 18, 19, 20 years old. We know the mindset of guys like this. And when you're looking at an opponent at a different level of football that everybody and their brother knows you're supposed to go out there and beat them by a significant margin, you can't help but think about that, right?
Yeah.
So it's the job of Beamer, it's the job of Clayton White, it's the job of Shula, all these assistants on the staff to make sure that these guys don't treat this game any differently.
Yeah, absolutely. My mind goes to the clip of Nick Saban getting really mad in a blowout when, they weren't disciplined in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they were beating Mercer by like 50 points.
Right, exactly. But that's the level of discipline you have to have if you want to keep things rolling into next week. Because as soon as you get complacent, in a game at home, especially as good as Williams-Brice is going to be under the lights and all of that, you can't lose focus at all. And as soon as you do, you're going to lose any bit of that momentum.
As far as objectives for Saturday's game, obviously don't let anybody get hurt.
Right.
It's the biggest thing. Make sure nobody gets hurt in a game like this that, again, doesn't have much overall bearing on how your entire season is, unless, of course, you were to lose that game, which would be completely detrimental. But, I look at Judge Collier, JT Gear, who are a little bit banged up, coming away from last weekend's game. And Beamer said the other day that, hey, we don't know if these guys can be ready to go. Don't let them go. Just sit them out. I'd rather see them in the sidelines with sweats and no pads on than out there playing, because you can survive without them. I even said Dylan Stewart, right? Because he got a little nicked up on Sunday and ended up finishing out the game and being fine. But if there's any doubt in your mind about him not being 100%, sit him.
Right.
Let him wait. It's fine. He'll be good to go next weekend for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dylan's enough of an athlete to probably play half of this game. But I agree, Tyler. If you let him go, but I don't know if you really need to see anything from Dylan in this game, right? Like,
You don't.
You don't.
Outside of stat padding,
Right.
which does he need that? No.
No.
Like everybody's aware of how good he is.
Yeah, and he has the potential to have big games to, again, make up the stats. He's going to have a 2-3 sack, right? Like if he goes out there Saturday, gets a sack or two, like he's going to make that up. He's going to have the explosive games that are going to get the job done.
And I feel like, again, if we're talking about the Nagurski Award, which of course Kyle Kennard won a year ago, I feel like the people that vote on that award would say, oh, okay, well he got 11 sacks, but 3 of them came against SC State. I'm gonna knock him a little bit on that because I don't quite count those the same as against SC opponents. So again, I don't even know how valuable those stats are in the grand scheme of things.
Right, absolutely. And then also, hat tip to Kyle Kennard. It's like the voters watched his tape, and if they watch Kyle's tape, they know obviously they know who Dylan is. It's not like South Carolina of old, and he's kind of still breaking out and busting onto the scene. So it's interesting. Dylan Stewart, absolute freak there for Sterling Lucas in that defensive end room.
I would ideally like to see Lenore Sellers not have to play the second half. I'd like you to be in a position where, all right, you're up by, 3-4 scores, and you feel pretty comfortable going to backups and stuff like that, which we'll get into who we want to see coming up in a moment. But, you got to protect your most valuable assets. And, ideally, hopefully, Sellers doesn't have to run a lot or get hit a lot in this game, and you can make it through clean and, start turning your attention to Vanderbilt after that.
See, Tyler, I'm a little bit different. I think halftime's a little ambitious. Like, I get, like, if you're up by so much, like, maybe play a drive or two into the third quarter, but nothing. Before the clock hits or gets below 10 minutes in the third quarter, be out of there.
I guess it's all depending on the score margin, right? Like, if you were up by 42 with 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, I'm already pulling it at that point in time. There's no need to be out there and risk injury. And again, last year Sellers didn't even play against Akron because he got banged up at the end of LSU. And it's like, hey, I'd rather you sit another week, get fresh, and get ready to go for. I think do they have the bye week after that? I think they did. So that's even more time for him to rest and recover. Had the Ole Miss game a few weeks after that. So yeah, as long as nobody gets hurt on Saturday night, we'll be feeling pretty good about this. And again, this will be an opportunity for a lot of younger guys to get out there and see the field. And we'll dive into coming up next who we are most interested in seeing take the field if this game goes the way we think it can go for South Carolina. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Day. We're presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's our Ed Joe Machika and Captain Dave along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Tonight, Carolina calls Coach Beamer, Todd Ellis, 7 o'clock on the game in Columbia, as well as Myrtle Beach. You'll hear Coach Beamer's final thoughts ahead of Saturday's matchup as they take on South Carolina State. Pregame coverage starting with the Gamecocks game day. Myself and Elijah Campbell will be live out at Jay's Corner right there at 1015 Rosewood Drive, getting you set for the matchup on Saturday night from 2 until 4. Network coverage takes over at 4 for that 7 o'clock kick. And again, as we talked about in the opening segment, we know what this game is. We know how this game is supposed to go. Ideally, you would like to see your bench get emptied over the course of the 4 quarters on Saturday. See a lot of guys you haven't seen up to this point. And my question is, okay, and this doesn't have to be somebody that's never played before. It could be somebody that played Sunday you just didn't get to see a lot of. Who are you most interested in seeing featured on Saturday night that you haven't seen featured at all or enough up to this point?
I'm going to give you one guy on offense, one guy on defense.
Okay.
I got Donovan Murph.
All right.
Offensively, I think
Did have a reception on Sunday.
Right. So we saw a little bit of him, but I think he's a big-time playmaker. I think we're going to see a big-time, like, downfield, I don't know, featured in kind of late-game scenarios if this game goes well for South Carolina. Defensively, Kelvin Hunter.
All right.
Yeah, young stud. Watched him come up through the camp circuit and whatnot. I think he can provide some value in this defense and, big-time player, has a nose for the football. Maybe an interception, couple deflections late in this game, maybe.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think that's fair. I look at, obviously, the quarterback room to start off with, and I hope we will get to see both, Aaron Nolan, Cutter Woods. I hope Jimmy Francis gets to go out there at the very end of the game and, throw that guy a bone, because that means you've obviously won the game by a significant margin. But this is where the battle for, I call it QB2. Luke Doty's technically QB2, but we kind of know he's an emergency quarterback if needed. The real QB2/future guy, if Sellers goes to the NFL next year, really starts this weekend. Or at least it goes to another level this weekend, because you're going to hopefully give these guys an opportunity to actually play in the game, right? And this is where Sellers got to play for the first time 2 years ago against Furman. And we saw him, go out there and flash, what his potential was, and he's obviously lived up to that and more so far. So I'm interested to see Cutter and Aaron Nolan in live game action against a lesser opponent, but nevertheless, live bullets are live bullets, and we'll see how those guys handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to see one of them get, into a rhythm, because, again, Luke Doty is your emergency quarterback right now, but if one of those two guys can show that they can get into a rhythm quickly, maybe Luke Doty isn't your QB2 after this week. And again, I think later as the season develops, and also we were talking yesterday, time and place too. Like, I think if you're late in a game and you still need some experience, I don't know if you go to Cutter or Air, but again, I think it's good to have those guys getting game experience and lots of it hopefully this week.
And I don't know how much separation there is between the two of them right now, and they put out the depth chart earlier on this week, which I really just think was last week's depth chart that we've moved ahead a week, but it was only Sellers and Doty listed on there, so you don't really know who right now option 3 would be. And look, we've heard a lot of really good things about Cutter Woods, good things about Aaron Nolan too, but I feel like Cutter's generated a little bit more buzz through camp. And forgive me, he won some kind of camp award that Beamer mentioned, I believe, last week. So just kind of reinforces, again, what we've heard about Cutter Woods up to this point. So I'm interested to, again, see these guys in live game action, who looks better, and what that kind of means as far as the future planning of the quarterback room goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think Cutter would have the momentum coming out of camp, and also showed some good things in the spring game as well. So we'll see. Mike Shula, helped develop Cutter, and as he was here, kind of as an assistant, helped bring him here to Carolina and helped recruit him as well.
It also, again, this is on the assumption that Sellers has a fantastic season and does go on to become like a first-round draft pick in the NFL. You start thinking ahead of like, okay, I call it quarterback math, right? Because every year you got to you got guys transferring out, look to guys transferring in, freshmen come in. You got to kind of figure out your pieces and how you're going to play this over the next couple of years, because you've got Cutter, you've got Aaron Nolan, you also have Landon Duckworth, who's still coming in next year's class and is a pretty highly touted guy. There's obviously options out there in the transfer portal if you don't like what you have there. So I think Saturday night can be the first indication of, as it was with Furman a couple years ago with Lenore Sellers, like, okay, when Spencer's gone, this is our guy, and we feel pretty darn good about him. And again, it's not like you're going to win or lose the job tomorrow night, but it gives you the first kind of steps in towards figuring out that next guy's going to be.
Right, absolutely. It's a big opportunity for both these guys, right? Like you kind of, control your own destiny here. I think this is a big game, to leave a good taste in Gamecock Nation's mouth, like which quarterback is going to do so. Like it's like, which one's going to go out there and make more plays, and have this fan base fired up about you being the next guy. It's going to be one of the two, you would think, and so I don't know, maybe both guys play well, and then, there's a furthermore battle for later games in the year where you can, see more action.
How about Isaiah Gustave? He did get to play on Sunday. Didn't get any carries, didn't get any touches, but he was on the field a little bit as we had a two-back rotation between Oscar Attaway and Rasul Faison. I don't know if people were expecting that or what. I kind of thought, it could go either way. I thought we'd see a little bit of a Gustave, but we didn't, at least as far as touching the football goes. I like to see what this guy has, right? He played at Colorado last year, played a bad offensive line, wasn't like the feature part of the running game for that offense. So I'd like to see him get some carries just to understand him a little bit more.
Right.
And again, you can probably go out there and maybe show out against a team like this. So take what you see with a grain of salt. But I just want to kind of figure out what exactly he is, what he brings to the table with this running back room, and how it could factor in going forward.
Right, Tyler. I think, as this offense will turn the page, looking ahead to Vanderbilt and, score kind of gets out of hand. I think you give the ball to Augustive first, but then you also look at Howell and then Matthew Fuller. Everyone, there hasn't been a whole lot of, everyone's kind of, as soon as he got here, everyone was excited that he was here. It's like, all right, when's he going to develop? When are we going to see Matthew Fuller? He's still developing, still, on the track to be the next guy here. But, I expect him and Jawarn Howell also, I wouldn't say a revenge game he's already, gotten, but this is, an opportunity for Howell to play his former school. And, I'm looking forward to seeing both those running backs, kind of led by Augustave in that second portion of this game.
I'm sure Jawarn Howell would like to get some carries against his former team. And again, hey, look, if I'm an SC State teammate of his and I saw the way he played 2 years ago, I'm like, yeah, dude, go get it at the next level. Like, I don't think there's any bad blood there or anything like that, certainly. So I'm sure he'd like to get some carries this weekend. Just say, hey, look at me, I'm at this next level, and I don't know, maybe that can inspire one of his teammates too. I don't know.
Yeah, Howell and Fuller, those two guys, keep your eyes out, and then obviously we'll see what Augustave has, and obviously you put it well, Tyler. Try to understand him more as a back. Like, we'll see.
Yeah, and again, you got guys like Judge Collier, JT Gear that I wouldn't expect to see this weekend because of their injuries from the Virginia Tech game. So it's an opportunity to see that depth a little bit in those respective rooms. Again, we already knew you're rotating guys, the defensive edge spot, opposite of Dylan Stewart. Quarterback, we saw so many guys out there on Sunday.
Right.
Miles Norwood, Vakari Swain, Leach got out there for a little bit too. So they already played a lot of guys, and we'll see how they play that this weekend as well.
Yeah, I expect a revolving door in the defensive backfield. Torian Gray knows what he's doing with some of the substitutions and whatnot. Clayton White, they've got that all on track, and they've got the guys too that talk about the next generation, coming up. I expect the next generation of defensive backs you will see in this game, rotating in and out, getting some reps against SC State.
We'll see as well, because, again, it doesn't sound like the offensive line is set in stone.
Right.
We know Shed Surratt was hurt this past weekend and possibly could have been your starting left guard. And you had Newsome, you had Marky Anderson out there. We'll kind of see how the offensive line's played and if maybe you try different combinations. Again, this is a game that affords you that opportunity if you want to do it. I don't know if they're going to, but again, you want to get this figured out as best as possible before SEC play starts next week. So here's your opportunity in a live game situation to maybe try rotating some guys in and out, different combinations, and seeing what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. You want cohesion for this starting unit, but even if you can't find it, I think this is the game to, at least try to get some kind of compact unit and something to take into SEC play for this offensive line. So cohesion and consistency are my two words for this offensive line. I think you're going to get to see some young guns in and get in the game, and then go from there and see how they're developing behind all these good tackles and whatnot.
So we'll see that Saturday night at 7 o'clock over at Williams-Brice Stadium. Of course, you can listen to that here on The Game as well. Coming up next, we'll take a look at tonight's NFL opening matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Hear from both head coaches as well as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika hanging out with you on your Thursday here on the game, but it's not just any Thursday. It's the opening night of the NFL season, 8:20 on NBC. Philadelphia and Dallas squaring off to get the season rolling. And, of course, it's going to be banner night for the defending Super Bowl champions, though they're not treating it like that. In fact, according to Nick Sirianni, cut number 36 here, Dave, he didn't even realize the banner was being unveiled tonight.
Yeah, I didn't know it was banner night. We won't be out for that. We've had a good training camp. I think we had good OTAs. I think our habits are going in the right direction, and you focus on those things as every practice that we go through, we're thinking about how did we tackle, how did we take care of the football, how did we take it away, how did we catch it, how did we block. And so you're just looking for those to constantly be on the rise. And I think, when you practice with the intensity that our team practices with, and you get that good on good work that we've gotten for so long, our good offensive line is going against our good defensive line. You have no choice but to get better. And so I feel good about that. Now we got to go do it. We got to let our habits take over in the game. As coaches, we got to let our habits take over in the game as players. But I feel good about where we are right now. And this will be a really good test.
So every championship team in the offseason obviously talks about, hey, we're turning our attention to the next season, not focused on this, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the Eagles have kind of laid it on a little too thick this offseason of like, we don't care about it. It's been in the past. We're moved on. And to the point where Nick Sirianni is like, I didn't even realize the banner was being unveiled. It's like, come on, dude. Don't make this a gimmick.
Right. No, it sounds like Howie Roseman has been talking to the team too much. This sounds like Howie Roseman talking through the team, right?
Yeah.
I've heard a couple interviews from him during the offseason, did the press tour after the Super Bowl and all that. And he's like, I'm hungry for my next one. I'm hungry for the next one. So
Sure.
I don't know. I'm not buying an ounce of what Sirianni's, talking about.
Sure.
And neither, I guess Landon Dickerson, it's a little bit different. He's internal, it's a player, it starts from inside, but
yeah.
Obviously Sirianni they've got it's the right mindset to have.
It is. And they're not wrong in thinking that, but I feel like I've heard about that more this offseason from Sirianni, from Jalen Hurts, guys like that, than I've heard for other championship teams where it's like, all right, we get it. You don't have to lay it on as thick.
Yeah, and I'm sure from Philadelphia, it started a little bit early in the offseason. Usually a couple teams will be like, yeah, we enjoyed ourselves and whatever, and that narrative comes out and the parade and all that. But, it's Philadelphia, so I don't know if, the parade it was so rowdy. Yeah. It's pretty typical for Philly.
So do you think the fan base completely loves Nick Sirianni now? Because remember, going into last year, people still weren't sold on this guy.
Right.
Despite the Super Bowl appearance a couple years ago, they had that long losing streak the year after that. He was fighting with fans in the stands, arguing back and forth, which, that's very quintessential Philadelphia coach, at the end of the day. But, he's just kind of rubbed this fan base the wrong way. And even with the Super Bowl win, I still think there's a lot of people that may not like him, but still okay, we know he's doing well and we can't run him out of town.
Yeah, I think it was typical Philly just being disgruntled, right? Like a good sports town,
great sports town.
Right.
An aggressive sports town.
Right. And that's just them, it's like, all right, put a little bit of heat on him, say we don't like him and everything. But as soon as they started running through the playoffs and realized what they had with the tush push and everything, it's like, all right, I think we got to hold on to this guy and Big Dom.
It's so funny the difference between him and Doug Peterson, right? Doug Peterson was the most low-key guy ever, right? And I get he's a football coach. Every football coach can be intense and fiery to a point, but he was just the most chill dude ever. And Nick Sirianni's this fire plug that's not afraid to scream in your face if you're criticizing him.
Right, absolutely, and has a bodyguard too.
Big Dom. We talked about Big Dom yesterday. You're going to see. I don't know. Big Dom's probably going to walk out with the Lombardi Trophy.
Taylor Swift.
If the team is not going to be out there on the field for the ceremony, Big Dom's probably going to be holding the Lombardi, right?
Yeah, most definitely. He's going to be the one with the gloves on, delivering it like the Stanley Cup or something like that. And I don't know, rightfully so. He's become I guess a symbol for that team and that city. It's very Philadelphia, if you will.
It is. The Eagles have never been more Philadelphia than they are right now, I feel like, between Sirianni, Big Dom, just the vibe of the team. Good sports town, but the whole vibe of the team is so Philly at the end of the day.
Yeah, the listeners aren't going to like Philadelphia. The Phillies are actually my second team because, and fun story, I guess, is like I used to live with a kid from Philadelphia, and so I would play Xbox with all of his friends. So whenever the postseason came along, I'm like, I think I'll root for the Braves.
Sure.
That did not bode well in my Xbox party.
Good rivalry there.
Right, exactly. So, I was forced to root for the Fighting Phils, unfortunately. But, yeah, good sports town nonetheless. And I would think they're going to take this game tonight from Dallas, no?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Heavy favorites.
I'm excited to see Saquon Barkley, start his campaign of following up the 2,000-yard season a year ago. Ran all over the Cowboys last year. I think got a buck, 40 or something against them in one of the games last year. So we'll see if he can replicate that again. Jalen Hurts, and I said earlier, I don't view Jalen Hurts as an elite quarterback in the NFL, a very good quarterback that fits perfectly within that system of what the Philadelphia offense is. But, I mean, when he needs to make a play, he can. But I still don't quite put him in that realm of like the Mahomes, the Allen, the Lamar Jacksons, those kind of guys. And he could be on his way to doing that. But they don't ask him to do everything in that offense because they don't need to. You got an amazing running game.
Right. I got two things for you, Tyler. Record number 15 black quarterbacks starting in the NFL. Jalen Hurts is part of that, so shout out with that stat. It's huge. But two, the Tush Push has a sponsor now. Did you see that?
Does it?
Yeah, sponsored by Dude Wipes, I believe.
That's not shocking at all.
Right, absolutely. So I believe it's a first play that's been sponsored.
Okay.
I don't know, and I don't know how you can't really integrate it in the broadcast, but I think there was like a deal for ad packages and stuff like that.
I was gonna say maybe like every time they do it in a game, every successful Tush Push touchdown, you get like 10% off.
Right.
Of Dude Wipes or something like that.
$5 off a pack of Dude Wipes, I guess. Maybe. I don't know, but so yeah, that
is. You know what? I'll give them credit. They saw an opportunity.
Right, absolutely.
Like Depends is sponsoring Deion Sanders' little sideline bathroom, which hey, that's perfect.
Same vein.
There's your clientele right there. That makes perfect sense. So shout out to Dude Wipes. And look, I'm picking the Eagles to win the game tonight. But on the other side, things get a lot more interesting. Let's go cut number 37 here, Dave. Brian Schottenheimer talks about this being a great opportunity taking on the defending Super Bowl champions.
I mean, great challenge, man. I mean, these guys, that's what they do. I think if you would talk to Nick and Nick was standing here, I guarantee you one of the things that they would talk about is they want to, own the line of scrimmage. And that's what we want to do. So you got two teams that are kind of built on that. And now you got to get out there and put the ball down and see how the trenches play out. But, again, I'm excited to watch our guys go compete. And, again, very formidable challenge. Jalen Carter, man, incredible football player. And their offensive line speaks for themselves. I mean, what they've done and what they've been able to do. Jeff Stoutland and I actually coached together in, 1998 at Syracuse University. Jeff was the tight end coach, and he's one of the top 2 or 3 offensive line coaches in our league, man. He's just different, and be great to give him a hug before the game.
I won't lie to you. I've forgotten several times this offseason that Brian Schottenheimer is now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. That was such a weird coaching search that ended up with him being the head coach. Again, I think a lot of us look at him as kind of a puppet for Jerry Jones at the end of the day, which is probably why he got the job. I don't have high hopes for this coaching tenure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Jerry Jones was making more news this offseason with his mouth than he was with with Marty or hiring Brian Schottenheimer. Like I don't know. Like he was.
You're not wrong to call him Marty Schottenheimer's kid.
Right. Yeah. Brian. Right. Exactly. So I don't know. Like it was not really a splash, and Jerry Jones is surrounding himself with yes men. It feels like at this point.
And we're going to see how that defense does without Micah Parsons. And as we've learned in the last couple days, Micah Parsons does have a back issue that he's apparently going to get an injection ahead of Sunday's game to play for the Packers as they open up the season. So maybe there was the part of like, okay, well, he could be injured down the line. But I'm kind of like in the camp of until he shows you he can't play, you got to hold on to this guy. And his ability to wreck a game speaks for itself. So we're going to see how good this Dallas defense can be without probably the best pass rusher in the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, offensively, they kind of retooled. We're able to extend, or CeeDee Lamb, got a big contract recently and everything. You added George Pickens in this offseason, I think still has some life left in him and, showed that he can catch the ball vertically downfield, really athletic. And if that can get him the football, this offense could be scary, but this defense, we'll have to see what it looks like without Micah Parsons. Again, no real pop from Dallas's defense. defense. So can they outscore everybody, Tyler? Is that what they're going to try to do?
I mean, you might have to. Can Dak Prescott stay healthy?
Right.
This is something that's becoming a growing concern. Missed half the season a year ago, and it's very evident once you get past Dak Prescott, you don't have a lot of good options in that quarterback room, despite some of the pieces you do have around him on offense, like CeeDee Lamb. So his health is something that's of a paramount concern to me as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the running backs too. Javonte Williams, you add in this offseason. Miles Sanders, kind of, bouncing around outside the league. Jaden Blue, some, the rookie out of Texas, providing some life to that room, I guess, as a rookie. But we'll see. I mean, Dak's not going to get Ezekiel Elliott, type of numbers from this running back room either. So I don't know.
By the way, I forgot Joe Milton was his backup now.
Overthrow Joe.
Yeah, Overthrow Joe. That, of course, generated a lot of buzz in the preseason for, rocketing the ball 8,000 miles an hour and, overthrowing guys left and right. We're also going to get to see the new era of George Pickens as a wide receiver that will be the complement on the other side to CeeDee Lamb. And look, George Pickens is a really, really talented wide receiver that is got some problems between the ears, and we'll see. Mike Tomlin, who I think is a great coach in terms of wrangling in chaotic talent. We'll see how Brian Schottenheimer does with that.
Right, exactly. I think George again, get him the football, and yeah, interesting cat there too. And George Pickens, very, very talented. You just got to keep him focused on the game. And yeah, if Mike Tomlin is shipping you off, I guess it's you're probably on the backside of your career. Like
Sure.
Nobody really kind of wants to. Right. So I don't know. We'll see. It's still talented, and maybe George can figure it out. I've always been a fan of throwing the ball vertically downfield to George Pickens.
Should be a fun game tonight, 8:20 on NBC to get the NFL season rolling, and then Sunday we get things rolling properly with a full slate of games in the 1 and 4 o'clock windows, which you can watch all simultaneously on NFL Redzone, though it's going to look a little different this year. We'll get into that coming up next as we wrap up hour number 1 of the halftime show. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. It's a halftime show. Tyra Ed and Joe Machika hanging out with you here on your Thursday, getting you set for not only a college football weekend, but the start of the National Football League. Dallas and Philadelphia playing tonight over on NBC. And then Sunday, you get your full slate of games in the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock windows, as well as Sunday Night Football with the Bills and the Ravens. But if you want to watch all the games happening simultaneously between 1 and 4 o'clock, or I guess 1 and 7 o'clock, you can do so with NFL Redzone, though this year Redzone going to look a little bit different. Scott Hansen, the longtime host of Redzone, was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, cut number 33 here, Dave, and he detailed exactly what's going to be different.
The business folks handle the business.
Of course.
And I have no say over different elements that could or could not be in the show.
Okay.
And so I'll just tell you right now, when you see me come on the air here, we're going to hit the Octo Box. We've got 8 games in the early window, taking you around all the different cities. And then when we get into it, ladies and gentlemen, it's been more than 250 days since the first full NFL Sunday, but we are back. And 7 hours of Red Zone football starts now.
Wow. Well said.
I realize that might be a slight change to some of you, but that's what the catchphrase will be.
So, for those that are not familiar, the catchphrase used to be 7 hours of commercial-free football starting right now. Now it is 7 hours of Red Zone football, which does imply, as we've learned, there will be commercials in Red Zone this year now that ESPN has acquired it from the NFL Network.
It's a travesty, Tyler. I don't know. I grew up on Red Zone because the Bears were really bad growing up. And so it's like, all right, like when the Bears, especially, sometimes you'll get that late, they'll be in the late window. It's the best way to follow your fantasy team without the commercials. That's like the whole, that was the whole point of it.
Well, you get to see the highlight plays, the scores, big moments, that kind of stuff, which again, accumulate your fantasy points. So yeah, that is a very easy way to keep up.
And a lot of that stuff happens like during commercials and for other games and stuff like that. So then when you have to cut back to it and then you're already behind showing old highlights and then, people are scoring while you're showing those ones and they're already behind. So I don't know. That was the whole point of Red Zone was commercial-free football. And, it's gone now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, they did start to put some in last year. Very small doses of it'd be like a Gatorade commercial or something like that would pop up that kind of, I think, worried people a little bit.
Right.
And then when you had the deal with ESPN, it now has gone full-fledged. We don't know the volume of commercials yet. We just know there will be commercials throughout the day.
Right, and if there is like a lull point, if you will, where like nothing's going on and you happen to slide a Gatorade ad on the side of it, right, and decrease the view, like that's fine, but like a full commercial break is a lot different.
And the way I understand it, because that's what they did last year, was kind of the double box thing with commercials, and I believe that's what's going to be the case this year.
Yeah.
And what I read yesterday, you'll still have a box of a game happening, and then they'll have an ad. And again, I don't know if it's going to be 30 seconds at a time, 2 minutes at a time, whatever, but you'll be able to still see football while the ad's being played. You'll just hear the ad audio instead of whatever's happening in that game.
Yeah, right. So again, and give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So there's probably going to be full commercial breaks, and it's going to get watered down to the point where I think our glorious king commercial-free football is fully gone.
So Chris brought up a really good point earlier, where he says this seems like a step towards having a premium version of Red Zone, where it's like, all right, you can buy in, I think it's like $30 a month for this ESPN thing. $30 a month will give you just standard Red Zone, which includes commercials. If you pay $10 more a month, you can get Red Zone Plus, which has no commercials, and Scott Hansen still can't go to the bathroom and all those kind of things. And guess what? There's going to be a lot of people say, yeah, I'll pay $10 more a month to not have commercials with my Red Zone, and boom, there you got even more money out of this thing.
The extra $10, and then that turns into 20, and then 30, and then it's like, how much do you want your commercial-free football? And it's like,
because here's the thing. Then there's a lot of people. There's a lot of blowback on this on Twitter yesterday. I can't believe it. I'm not watching Red Zone, not buying it this year. Okay, well, you're still just going to watch the regular games, which have ads in them anyway.
Right.
The NFL knows you're not going anywhere. The NFL has you in a box right now. You're either going to pay for this Red Zone thing, or you're just going to watch the regular games on TV and watch all those ads anyway. Like, we're so football starved in this community, in this society, they could throw 1 million ads at us and we'd still watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Like again, like they've got you right where they want you, and selling to ESPN or selling the rights to ESPN. ESPN trying to increase the value of their I guess package, another streaming package now, which is growing, I guess, if you will. Not a whole lot there right now.
Honestly, it's shocked me it's taken this long for the NFL to start doing this.
Right.
With Redzone, and again, they started to trickle into it a little bit last year, but like again, and I don't know, maybe the numbers look a little bit different. I imagine it's not going to be that great of a difference between who was watching Redzone last year and this year based on there being commercials. Like the NFL's like, oh, we could have done this a long time ago and made even more money.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, Tyler, still probably like, buy into it because again,
there
right.
You go.
I'm still probably
You're
gonna
still
get
part of it,
right? Again, because Red Zone's the best background noise too, and like I mentioned, the Bears they're fun to watch now and whatnot. But I still have that package as well.
And for a lot of people, if you're a religious Red Zone watcher and you go back to just watching regular games at 1 or 4 o'clock, you'd be like,
no, it really is.
What am I missing? There's a ton of games going on. I don't get to see all these highlights outside of when Carissa Thompson cuts in every 15 minutes to show you one clip from one game. Like that's not going to be enough for you.
It's either really good background noise or another reason to put my phone down. And again, Sundays it can add up with pickups of the phone, right? Because again, you're checking the fantasy score and all that. So I don't know, Red Zone, it's so cohesive. So many commercial breaks,
Yeah. So new era of Red Zone starting on Sunday with the NFL. And again, we're all going to watch just because we're sickos and addicted to it at this point. 1 hour in the books, 2 more hours to go. We'll dive into what it's like to play against Lenora Sellers, a Virginia Tech defensive lineman, gave his thoughts coming away from Sunday's game, which we'll hit coming up next on the halftime show here on The Game. Tyred here for our friend Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank. Jacob Crowder is the mortgage guru, and if you're looking for one, he has got you covered. He has helped so many 107.5 Game listeners and can help you as well, and we at The Game personally recommend him. Owner and operator right here in the Midlands, Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise processing and underwriting. If you're looking to make a move, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005 or email him at jcrowder@firstpalmetto.com. Interest rates is stabilized, as well as local housing markets, and now is as good a time to buy a house as any. And Jacob and First Palmetto Bank have products to help home buyers. If you're considering building a home, they have no-nonsense construction loans that fit your needs. Again, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005. His MLS number is 198432, and First Palmetto Bank is a member of FDIC and an equal housing lender. Welcome back in. Hour number 2, halftime show, presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Ed and Joe Machico along with you here on the game. Coming up in the next segment, we'll hear from Ernest Robinson, who is the play-by-play voice for South Carolina State ahead of Saturday night's matchup between the Gamecocks and the Bulldogs, as we'll get some thoughts from him about what this team brings to the table and how good they're going to be this upcoming year, coming off of a Celebration of Pole appearance a year ago. Joe, what do you think it's like to try and tackle Lenore Sellers? Like, if you were tasked, what position did you play in football back in the day?
Defensive end.
Defensive end? Okay, so if you were an edge rusher that was tasked with coming off and trying to bring Sellers to the ground before he got rid of the football or escape the pocket, how difficult do you think that would be?
Very. I think I need help in a lot of it, because if you're trying to tackle this kid one-on-one, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I feel like he's one of those guys that even if you hit him while he's standing up, it might hurt you more because he's just muscle.
It
like
needs to
top
be
to bottom.
Full rugby, like gator roll, and it better be your best.
Yeah, you're probably going to need some help coming out too. You're maybe not going to be able to take care of them just yourself. And it's kind of one of those things that I feel like when you reach out to grab him and you look and your arms are empty, I'm like, where'd he go? Oh, he's 15 yards up the field already type thing.
Yeah, and then you have to get up and chase him, and he's way further down the field. And as you try to chase, he just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as he gets to the end zone.
So he did get sacked a couple times in the game against Virginia Tech on Sunday. One of the players that had half a sack in that game was Kamari Copeland, one of their defensive linemen. Cut number 32 here, Dave. Here's Kamari Copeland on TikTok the other day describing what it was like of having to play in Lenore Sellers in game 1.
But I want to say, this dude, Lenore's, is strong as heck. I'm not going to lie, bro. Any other quarterback, I would have sacked on this play, right? But this dude is strong as heck, bro. I'm going to give respect where respect is due. I'm not even trying to glaze. Bro, this dude is strong as heck, bro. And then I got up and tried to chase him. He fast as heck, too. Like, hey, man, my respect go to Lenore's, bro. He's strong as heck. My respect to South Carolina, but they got a good squad, and they'll be pretty good this year,
So there's somebody that was quite literally on the field with him 4 days ago now, describing what it was like. And again, he did get half a sack out of him, but I imagine there's game planning, right? There's prepping, and I'm sure a scout team quarterback or somebody for Virginia Tech was being Lenore Sellers in the lead up to this game. But then you take on the real thing, and there's no parodying that in practice. Like, Lenore Sellers is a different kind of animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, really hard to bring down, and one of the aliens on this offense, and one of the aliens that lives over there in that football facility.
Mm-hmm. And I go back to a couple years ago when he made his debut against Furman, which I think was in game number 2 of that season, and we saw him, uncork the 50-yard touchdown and move around a little bit, and that was your first instance of, hey, this guy is pretty good, right? And again, there's a lot of quarterbacks that come in as 4 and 5 stars that get a lot of buzz, and when you see him on the field, you're like, oh, all right, he doesn't look all that special. I feel like the list of quarterbacks that didn't live up to the potentials is a lot longer than the ones that did, but Sellers was hyped a lot locally for what he did at South Florence and winning the state championship and all that kind of stuff. And the few instances we saw of him in his true freshman season, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the dude. The 36-yard touchdown run against Vanderbilt and all that kind of stuff. And again, it took a few weeks to kind of get the ball rolling last year, but when he hit his stride, my goodness, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And going back to, you see a lot of half sacks with this kid, all right? Like, there's not a whole lot of like bringing him down one-on-one, right? So you need some help. And yes, I think, talking about SC State a little bit too, like, this is a game where we could see the next Lenore Sellers, if you will. I don't know if they've got one on the roster, but again, Cutter Woods, Aaron Nolan have a big chance to, make a name for themselves as the next guy too. So we'll have to see, but 16 certainly making a case. Everyone's starting to wake up, not just the people around Columbia.
Who do you think the toughest player in college football is right now to try and stop at their respective spots? And again, it can be difficult to compare like quarterbacks to running backs and wide receivers and stuff like that. Who do you think presents the biggest challenge?
I think Jeremiah Smith's speed presents a big challenge, but I also think Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame, like the running back, that guy's quads are massive. Like, I can't imagine trying to tackle him, trying to hit the hole or meeting him in the hole.
Sure.
There's a lot of good ones there. I'm trying to think who else. Arch Manning in the open field, white boy. Like, I don't know. I feel like I could tackle Arch, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, what we saw out of him last week,
not necessarily a freak.
Didn't exactly instill the most confidence. I think Nick Harbor, especially now that he's coming on as a receiver, that speed alone makes him, I think, next to impossible to stop if he gets a step on you.
Right.
Again, when you go back and look at that touchdown that he scored, the safeties were playing down. He was in a one-on-one with the corner, and he knew all I got to do is get past this guy,
right,
and he ain't catching me. Hits the post, boom, he's got 5 yards on him, and then as long as Sellers doesn't underthrow that football, then we're money, and we were.
Yeah, word on the I guess Harbor, if you want to try to, contain him or stop him, you better get one heck of a bump at the line because,
yes,
if he has at least a half a step on you within the first couple, like he's gone. And we saw that on Sunday. And, it's the video game,
sure,
material that we've heard with this kid since he's gotten here and starting to live up to the hype.
And I almost wonder now that he finally had that wow explosive touchdown. I don't think anybody's anointing him wide receiver one, but he's trending that way. So okay, and maybe it won't be the same effect against SC State because of the talent discrepancy there. But when Vanderbilt rolls into town, are you bracketing him? Are you making sure you got double on him that's going to allow your Mazio Bennett's or your Jared Browns or Dre Jacobs or some of these freshmen to have more success because they're hey, we're going to make sure this guy doesn't beat us?
Yeah, I know Clark Lee's certainly not going to, let him get deep, right? I think it's the momentum plays, especially with it being at Williams-Brice Stadium. A play like that will, blow the roof off of that place,
oh,
right?
My God.
We
were already
get some seismic waves.
We had already waited 3 years for Sunday's touchdown, and that was in the bins, and it sounded pretty darn loud seeing it on TV.
Right.
If he does the same thing on Saturday or in one of these home games, that place is going to lose its mind.
Right, absolutely. And I think, like I said, we'll get some seismic waves. Chris Jackson, I believe it is, charting all that stuff out.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's ridiculous. And so I think, Clark Lee and Vandy are certainly going to bring into the game plan, hey, let's not let this kid get vertical. And so we'll see if Harbor can switch it up. I mean, he'd catch it, going sideways, going through the middle of the field, and then turn on the burners, which also equally is dangerous.
But getting back to the point, talking about Lenore Sellers and the difficulty that is stopping him, it's one thing to contain a quarterback that can just get the ball out quick and throw it all over the yard. But when you have that element of being mobile and being able to escape the pocket, and not only that, when you feel like you have him dead to rights, like so many guys did a season ago, Shamar Turner with Texas A&M, was quite literally on his shoulders, I believe. Sellers dumped him over and kept on running. How do you stop that guy? You know what I mean? And again, you better hope you got 3 or 4 friends around you that can all convene at the same time, because one-on-one, again, even if you outweigh him and are bigger than him, he still somehow finds a way to make those magic plays happen that, again, further instills the confidence that Carolina fans have in their quarterback.
Yeah, Tyler, it's what goes into the fact that, I don't think we've seen, the craziest thing out of him yet. There's still so much potential for, this kid's ceiling. And, he's already a physical specimen as it is. But then, in there with Luke Day and lifting with, I'm sure he was moving a lot of weight this offseason. There's no way he could be, that strong and Superman-like. Without, getting a good weight program. So, yeah, it's what makes him different. Obviously, physically gifted, but then, when you tack on the weights in the offseason plan, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and again, we saw some of that on display on Sunday against Virginia Tech, and we'll see how much, it's going to be featured tomorrow night. I don't know. Again, I would try and limit him getting hit as many times as possible if I could. So maybe we don't see a ton of the design stuff against SC State, but when Vandy rolls into town next weekend, that's obviously an SC opponent, and we'll see how they compare to last year. Going to learn a lot about them this weekend as they take on Virginia Tech in their game coming up on Saturday night. But you're going to want Sellers at his best coming up next weekend as you start SEC play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think Mike Schuler's going to be running him into harm's way a whole lot. Maybe a couple design runs where, you can get between the tackles and make 1 or 2 guys miss.
Yep.
And I think contact's good in this game too, but you don't want too much contact. You don't want him getting hurt or anything like that. But, I think when you shy away from contact and shy away from physicality in games like this, that's when you lose momentum and you come out soft there or complacent against Vandy.
Yeah, and it's not that you're trying to change what you're doing. It's just you got to be careful, right?
Absolutely.
And again, you don't want to have an unnecessary injury occur against a team that, at the end of the day, you're supposed to be able to handle, even if some of your best players weren't out there. Which goes back to my point about Judge Collier, JT Gear. I'm I don't need to see those guys play tomorrow night or Saturday night. Like, let them sit, let them rest, let them get healed up, because you're going to need them when you get into the slate of conference play in a couple weeks.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. You're going to need every guy that you can get, and it's the grind of the SEC. You're going to have bumps and bruises through those weeks too. So having everybody healthy is going to be key, and you need a week like this to develop some depth behind you in case you do have those bumps and bruises.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens there. Again, it's an opportunity to hopefully empty out your bench a little bit and see some depth from some guys that you didn't really get to see a whole lot of in week number 1. Again, we only saw a handful of those young receivers, Donovan Murphy being one of them, did get a reception, but I would hope that Saturday night gives you an opportunity to see a lot more of those guys. And hey, maybe Jaden Sellers does catch a pass from Lenoris, and maybe they can join that list of brothers scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Not to slight on Jaden Sellers at all, because he was playing in Atlanta and everything.
Yeah, he was.
This
didn't get a touch.
Right, absolutely. And this could be the week to do it, right? The brother to brother. We've been talking about it. It's part of the reason, Jaden Sellers came here with Lenoris and all that and everything. So, yeah. I think we could big potential for it this week against SC State. If not, I mean, Jaden plays enough for us to see that in a big spot too. So, and nobody knows each other like brothers, right? Like, so yeah. I expect that to maybe peek its head this weekend, and we'll certainly see a lot of it here going forward.
Yeah, and that would you want to talk about a moment that would blow the roof off Willie B if that does happen, and people obviously with the local connection and knowing the story and stuff like that, that'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, under the lights, the home opener. So, I mean, big shot play too. I mean, Jaden's got the speed. So, we'll see. I'm sure I don't know if it's in the script anywhere, but I'm sure there's a couple shot plays brother to brother, and, the connection, again, you don't have to worry about that.
Well, and a game like this also allows you an opportunity to maybe try something you weren't as comfortable with trying against Virginia Tech. And not that you want to put all your cards out there for your SEC opponents to see, but if there's a wrinkle or maybe a different combination of guys out there in the field that you said, you know what, Virginia Tech's too risky to try this against. Maybe you try it against SC State and give you some ideas going forward. So those kind of things are on the table for Saturday night's game against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, most definitely. And, you could be an opportunity to throw some funky things on tape, some misleading tape. It's always the gamesmanship of the SEC, and these coaches are certainly thinking about it. And you obviously don't want to, overthink yourself too much, because, again, it is SC State. But, as you work your way in, a little gamesmanship never killed anybody either.
We'll get some more insight into the Bulldogs coming up next. Earlier on this morning, we talked with Ernest Robinson, who's the play-by-play voice for South Carolina State on the Garnet Trust Hour, and we'll hear from him coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Ed, Chris Clark, and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Of course, getting things set for South Carolina and South Carolina State coming up on Saturday night at 7 o'clock over at Williams-Brice Stadium. Joining us now to get some more insight into the Bulldogs is their play-by-play voice, Ernest Robinson, joining us here on the phone lines. Ernest, first of all, appreciate you taking your time for us this morning. Boy, you sure called an exciting game last weekend with South Carolina State edging out of Wofford 16-15.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it didn't become a lot of fun until it was over with and we won the ball game. If we hadn't won the ball game, it wouldn't have been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. As we look at this South Carolina State team, I just kind of first want you to talk a little bit about Coach Barry, who's obviously taken over for a legend in Coach Pugh, and there's obviously never an easy way to do that, but he's come in, had success right away, took this team to a Celebration Bowl a year ago, and obviously off on the right foot with a 1-0 start this year.
Yeah, Coach Barry has really changed the culture of South Carolina State, and it's a very adaptive one to today's environment of NIL and what we face at our level. When you look at the football championship subdivision level now, Coach Barry's embraced the fact that you can't recruit and plan for 2 years or 3 years. Every year is its separate self. So we basically got a new team. We got 44 newcomers on this team, 32 transfers, 12 freshmen, and then we brought back some kids. But it's basically a new team, and he's having to start all over, but he's embraced that. The kids have embraced that, and you adapt, and that's what we've done in Orangeburg.
Ernest, Chris Clark here. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit about this team. And one of the things I noticed watching the game, the opener there against Wofford, was just the style of offense that the Bulldogs are playing this year. I know they utilize 2 quarterbacks. Look like they really like to throw the football around a lot. A lot of up-tempo, some no-huddle stuff, throwing the ball all over the yard. Tell us a little bit about this offense, and then whether or not you think that stylistically they're going to stick to what they know and what they do best against South Carolina this weekend.
Well, football hadn't changed. As I said, I used the word adapt. We had to adapt. We didn't run the ball. We couldn't get the run established, so we didn't run the ball. But, it's all about running the football and stopping the run. I don't care what level it is. That's what you have to do. The only reason we threw the football so much in that first game was we weren't able to establish anything on the ground. We've got a good offensive line, but it's a new offensive line. We only returned one guy from last year. Roger Smith, the right tackle. He's a big kid. He's about 6'4", 340. Really good ball player. All-conference, second-team all-conference. Probably will make first team this year. But we got some experienced guys coming in, so they're still learning themselves. I think we'll be competitive along the front. I mean, we're big up front. But USC is bigger than I've seen them in the past up front and really strong up front. So that's going to be a problem. But we've got to at least try to establish something on the ground, and hopefully that'll open up the passing game. But we were doing basically what we needed to do to win the ball game on Saturday.
Ernest, Jack Veltri here. Appreciate you joining us, man. Wanted to ask you, just, Gamecock fans may not know a lot about this team, but obviously you being around them as often as you are, you know them very well. Who would you say are 3 players that people need to watch out for from a South Carolina State perspective this weekend?
Well, let me go to the defensive side of the football. Gerard Washington is the next great defensive back coming out of South Carolina State. He's number 12. He's a corner. He's a pretty big kid, 6'2", 190. He's a graduate student. So from that standpoint, when I say graduate student, he transferred with Coach Barry from Benedict. Their experience, really good defensive back. I would imagine he and Nick Harbor are probably going to get real acquainted on Saturday night. Also up front, Josh Barker, really good defensive tackle. He came to South Carolina State from Benedict as well. His second year in the program. He perhaps is going to be all conference. Kid who made a difference last week is number 11, Mike Lunds. He's a transfer from Tulane. He's a rush-in, not quite as quick as Dylan Stewart, but he can get to the quarterback. The problem with Lenore Sellis is once you get to him, can you get him on the ground? And that's where most people have problems. So we've got to be able to tackle well and slow the Gamecock offense down. On the offensive side of football, it could be a number of people. It's early in the season. We're still trying to find out exactly who we are. We played 2 quarterbacks this past week, Ryan Stubblefield and Billy Atkins. Ryan Stubblefield probably had the more success, but Stubblefield's been in the program for 2 years. He came to South Carolina State 2 years ago from Incarnate Word. He's not very big, but he's got really good arm, and he's really quick. He can run the football as well. So both those guys are going to have a good game for South Carolina State to remain competitive in this football game. Billy Atkins, this is his first year in the program. He's a graduate student as well. He came from James Madison. So, he's played at a different level of football, but was coming to South Carolina State hoping to kind of establish himself. Both those guys played well in training camp, so we're not sure exactly who eventually was going to be the starting quarterback. You'll see both of them on Saturday night, dependent upon how the one in front of the other will play. Billy started the first game. It wouldn't surprise me if Ryan, who was the incumbent from last year, played a lot last year, gets a start on Saturday night.
Again, talking to South Carolina State play-by-play guy Ernest Robinson here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. And when you look at this game coming up this weekend, obviously the objective is always to win no matter what football game at whatever level. But what are some specific objectives that you think SC State is hoping to get out of this game this weekend?
Well, from the standpoint of experience, dealing with the crowd, we eventually have to deal with that at our level. So dealing with the crowd, diversity. A lot of times when you have an FCS team playing a Division I team like USC, especially in that environment, how you handle that environment the first 8 minutes of the football game will depend upon how long you can hang around. And, we'll play it quarter by quarter. We want to stay in it. And, there was a time, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, South Carolina State and the Gamecocks, I want to say went into the locker room tied at 10. Gamecocks eventually, blew that game out. And, from that standpoint, that was probably the best South Carolina State played at Williams-Brice Stadium. But, we have to take it minute by minute, quarter by quarter, possession by possession. I am concerned because against Wofford, we control their offense, but their only scores came on a kickoff return for a touchdown, a block punt for a touchdown, and the other was a short field that they kicked a field goal. So they didn't really move the ball very well on us offensively, but our special teams broke down, and which is unusual for us because we have really good special teams. We got a good kicker, the punter, the kicker, Nico Cavanillas-Alti, transferred to us from Utah, and he's got a really strong leg. I mean, he's a kid who can consistently knock it in from 50 yards out. And but again, the pass protection or the blocking protection on the punt broke down, and we got to keep punt blocked. And by the way, the punter came from Utah as well. His name is Elliot Janish. He and Nico both came to South Carolina State. So that's the thing about Chennis Berry. He looks at a team each year, and, you go to the portal and try to find what you need. And, we get kids that come in and want to play. And a lot of times when you look at it, adapting to the market, you'll have a kid that may go to, say, like USC and play for 3 years and really never get to play. And finally, they're about to graduate and say, look, I want to play some football, and I'm not getting any playing time here. We try to find that kid and give him an opportunity, even if it's for 1 year, because now with the environment that we're in, you got to make good on that 1 year.
Ernest, 60 seconds here left before we got to hit a hard break. But what's generally the conference outlook, not counting this game, for South Carolina State this year, you think?
Well, one thing, we're picked to win the conference, but we were picked fourth last year. And how we were picked to win the conference and only got one person on the all-conference team in preseason is beyond me. But that's the respect that the conference has for our program. It's going to be exciting. The way our schedule shakes down, the last 5 games, and we only have 5 conference games, those are the last 5 games of the season. So from that standpoint, all of the games leading up to that, we're getting ready for the conference run.
He is Ernest Robinson, the play-by-play voice of the South Carolina Bulldogs ahead of Saturday night's game in Williams-Brice Stadium. Mr. Robinson, we appreciate you taking your time and look forward to what happens on Saturday night.
Next time I talk to you, make sure you call me Ernest. Mr. Robinson was my dad.
Yes, sir. We certainly will do. We appreciate it, Ernest.
All right, take care.
Again, Ernest Robinson there, play-by-play voice of the South Carolina State Bulldogs. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour, the Guard Trust Hour here, presented by Krantz Cooling Heating on your Thursday on the Game.
insane.
All right, welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave hanging out with you on your Thursday here on the game. Again, tonight begins the NFL season with the Cowboys and the Eagles squaring off on NBC. To get things rolling, I always enjoy this. The Athletic every year puts out their Hope-O-Meter, which I talked about this for college football a couple weeks back, where subscribers to The Athletic can vote however many times you want, about what team you're a fan of and if you're optimistic or pessimistic about their upcoming season. And, of course, it's going to be a smaller sample size compared to like a Twitter poll or something like that. But they run the poll over the course of a couple weeks, compile the results, and put out the list from most optimistic to least optimistic in terms of where certain NFL fan bases are at going into the season. Are you looking at this right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up, and I did a little bit of browsing during the break.
I would say, we want to guess what the most optimistic fan base is going into the year?
I believe it was the Eagles. No,
not the Eagles. They were
Chiefs?
Second. No, you're in the right division.
Right. The Raiders? No, I would
not the Raiders.
I don't know why. The Chargers.
No, one more team.
I see.
The Broncos.
Right, yeah.
The Broncos were at 99% optimism.
Sean Payton effect.
1% pessimism. And you look at Sean Payton's tenure, they've gotten a little bit better each and every year. Bo Nix seems to have finally figured out the quarterback thing when it looked like in the beginning that it was going to be very, very rough for him. So I feel like they're riding pretty high going into the year. You still have that other team in your division in the Chiefs that you have to go through, obviously. But I think last year the Chiefs showed their vulnerability because they kept winning all those one-score games, or they kept winning in crazy forms and fashions all year long. So that was, out of the 3 straight years they've gone to the Super Bowl, that was the weakest they had looked during that time. So I feel like a lot of people in Denver are saying, okay, here's our opportunity. We've got it this time. We're taking a step forward, and we think the Chiefs are maybe stepping back.
Yeah, most definitely. Tyler, I'm a big believer in Bo Nix in the pros. I wasn't necessarily the biggest believer of him in college, but I've seen some clips of him and some wisdom from Dan Lanning talking about like 95% of people think they have a choice in what they want to do and stuff like that. I don't know. That comes from a quarterback that seems locked in, right?
Yeah.
And so I think Sean Payton's got him on the right track, and yeah, kid works hard.
And look, as much as I don't like Sean Payton, longtime head coach of the New Orleans Saints, terrorized my favorite team, the Falcons, for years and years and years, he's a good football coach. Like, I cannot deny the guy's a good football coach and has clearly gotten the Denver Broncos. And once they finally got Russell Wilson out of there, he's finally got the Denver Broncos on the right path.
Yeah, most definitely. I also like Sean Payton. I do not like Drew Brees. I don't know. My friends give me some flack for that. But, yeah, Sean Payton being the answer over there in Denver and, swinging things back to the Denver Broncos that we kind of grew up, knowing the powerhouse out there in Denver and good football being played there at Mile High.
So a lot of the optimism for Denver fans probably does come from Bo Nix kind of coming into his own as a quarterback in the NFL, which makes perfect sense when we go to the bottom of the list and we talk about pessimism, because the Colts, 7% optimism, 93% pessimism for a team that's deciding between Danny Dimes and AR-15 at quarterback right now.
Yeah, not good things in Indianapolis. Rest in peace, Jim Irsay. This isn't necessarily, his team or the team that he had envisioned. And ever since, they had two, they had the sheriff and Peyton Manning ran him out of town. And then you had another definitive guy there in Andrew Luck.
Who couldn't protect.
Right, couldn't protect, and things didn't necessarily go right there. So I don't know if this is just karma or something for the Colts, but yeah, they got to figure something out. And they had the Joe Flacco experience, as well. And it seems like they've got a rotating door of quarterbacks. And Shane Steichen needs to draft somebody that can be the guy, or else he's not going to be the guy.
I'm trying to remember the stat. I think this will be their 7th different starting quarterback in the last 7 years, if I'm remembering correctly, right. Going back to Andrew Luck, who would have started at 18 and then retired for 19. And then I think it was Jacoby Brissett that took over in 19. And
right.
You had Matt Ryan. You had, who else has started there? Phillip Rivers had that season there.
Like Foles was playing a little bit there.
Foles played a little bit there. guy. Yeah, they're kind of in
rotating door.
They're in a death spiral right now when it comes to quarterbacks. And
Danny Dimes.
yeah, now again, you had a guy in AR-15, which was a risky pick to take in the top 5 because he was very incomplete as a college quarterback. But they looked at his upside potential and said, "Hey, we can turn him into the guy we want." It hasn't happened yet. You bring in Danny Dimes, who again just faltered in New York after they gave him all that money. And again, whoever you decide on, your ceiling is only so high, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. And the AR experience hasn't panned out the way that they've wanted it to. And one of the most athletically gifted quarterbacks with that size. I watched him play when he was at Florida, South Carolina, and he was cartwheeling onto the field. Similar to Jordan Birch with that kind of size and athleticism. So obviously, a talent worth watching, but certainly hasn't panned out in the NFL. And the Colts certainly need to reset. And life is a lot better when you have a definitive guy at quarterback like they do in Chicago.
Here's an interesting one, almost dead even. Steelers at 51% optimism, 49% pessimism. Of course, they've garnered a lot of headlines in the offseason with bringing in Aaron Rodgers, the trades that they've made and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm a Steelers fan, I don't look at what's happened this offseason and think, oh, wow, now we're on our way to a Super Bowl. Like, yeah, are they probably going to win 10 games again? Yeah, because that's just kind of what they do. Do they have a shot at winning the division? Maybe, or you get in as a wild card. But I don't look at anything that's happening with the Steelers right now and say, okay, we're about to get back to our old ways of going to AFC championships and Super Bowls. And by the way, the last time they won a playoff game, I believe, was the divisional round of the 2016 season. Like, it's been that long. Again, they've made it a few times, but haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, sitting right in the middle of the pack there in Pittsburgh, and talk about another franchise needing a definitive guy at quarterback. Ever since Roethlisberger's been gone, it feels like it's been another rotating door there, in the Berg. So it'll be interesting. Tomlin usually finds his way into the playoff, but again, it's never really exciting, and it's been a while, like you mentioned, Tyler, since they've won a playoff game. So looking for momentum, but I think everybody in the Steel City would be all right with another one of those years where you float, make the playoffs, and then we hope you can continue to build up from there. If playoffs is I guess the floor for this team, everybody's still happy.
Lions come in at number 5 overall in optimism at 95 compared to 5% pessimism, and this becomes an interesting point in the Lions story, right? Because 2 years ago, when they make the run of the NFC Championship game, win their first playoff game in 30-plus years, they're the darling story of the NFL. Everybody's wanting to support it. If your team wasn't in the playoffs or got eliminated, everybody was cheering for the Lions because they'd been perennial losers for so long. Maybe you weren't because you're a Chicago fan, but most people were cheering for them because, hey, this team that lost for so long is finally figuring things out. They go last year and become legitimately one of the best teams in all of the NFL. And then they lose right away in the playoffs. And it's like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen. Now is the point where the expectation of winning starts to take over a little bit. We're like, okay, if they went like 11-6 and made a wild card instead of won the division, people say, hey, that's not acceptable. We should be better than that. Like now, because you've won consecutive seasons or several seasons in a row, now people start having different expectations for you.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. At least for me, anybody but the Packers. So it was good to see the Lions get some. But again, you're at a spot with winning when your coordinators are getting poached to be head coaches at other spots. They lost both their offensive and defensive coordinator, this offseason. So, it's going to be interesting to see how the Lions can respond through that. And, that does set the expectation of winning when you are at that point when your coordinators are getting poached.
The Bears are actually at 88% optimism, taking one of those coordinators and Ben Johnson as their head coach. And, I feel for Caleb Williams because, most quarterbacks are supposed to take a step forward in year number 2, but he went through having his head coach get fired in year number 1, having bring in a new guy, learn his ins and outs as a play caller and all that kind of stuff and kind of adapt. But you look at what they have on that team, particularly on offense, they've got a lot of pieces that can allow them to be successful. We just don't know what Ben Johnson is as a head coach yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to take some growing pains, sure, but I think the shiny, fancy new offense is going to be, something different in Chicago. And Caleb Williams, the Bears have never had a 1,000-yard passer. I think this might be the year to get it done. Yeah. Even if it's not pretty and even if they don't go to the playoffs and whatnot, it would be a good foundation to set, and I think the momentum is certainly there.
Eagles number 2 overall at 98% optimism compared to 2% pessimism. Again, You love him or hate him, Nick Sirianni is a coach that has consistently won double-digit games. He's been to 2 Super Bowls in the past 3 years. Obviously now has the Lombardi Trophy. It kind of seems like, I don't know if they're going to become a dynasty like the Chiefs are, but they're a team that you're going to have to deal with every single year in the NFC going forward, it seems like.
Yeah, my relationship with Philadelphia was a little bit scarred from the double doink, but again, that was Chicago's doing there.
Sure.
But good sports town, go Birds. Like I think the Delco accent's one of the most unique ones in this country too. It's fun. We got a couple door guys like that, and again, like as I mentioned, had some friends from Philadelphia when I was in school here too. So elite fan base. I think the Eagles are prime and ready to go back to where they were last year, and led by Big Dom, the most Philadelphia thing of it all.
Here's a team that I'm looking out for this upcoming year. Commanders, 91% optimism, 9% pessimism. Obviously a great story last year, making the run to the NFC Championship with Jaden Daniels exploding on the scene as a rookie. We'll see how that sophomore slump hits him this year, and if they can maybe contend for the NFC East.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Jaden Daniels and again, Scary Terry getting a big deal down there in Washington. So, again, it's fun for the Commanders to be back, a franchise that had been, blacklisted, I guess, from rooting for a long time.
Well, they had an awful owner for a long time.
Right, exactly. Nobody rooted for him for an awful owner, so you got the ownership change, and now there's something to root for down in Washington. It's a fan base that's been there for a while, a rabid one, too. So, good for them, I guess.
There's your look at the Athletics Hope-O-Meter for the most optimistic and least optimistic fans in the NFL. Where does the Hope-O-Meter sit for teams in the SEC after 1 week of competition? We'll dive into that coming up next to wrap up hour number 2. It is the halftime show. It's our Joe Machika, Captain Dave, on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head and Joe Machiga. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on The Game tomorrow. Busy day here on The Game as we'll have the high school scoreboard show with Elijah Campbell and Justin Hall. They wrote Justin Long on here for some reason, but it is Justin Hall tomorrow night at 7 o'clock as they preview everything across high school football in the Midlands and get you set for South Carolina and SC State coming up on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. And again, pregame coverage starting on Saturday afternoon with myself and Elijah Campbell for Gamecocks Game Day. From 2 until 4, we'll be live out at Jay's Corner at 1015 Rosewood Drive. You can come by, hang out with us, get some food, and get set for a fun night over at Williams-Brice Stadium. So we talked in that last segment about the Athletics Hope-O-Meter for NFL fans ahead of the start of the season where everybody's 0-0. And if you think your team's going to go to the Super Bowl, you can hold that optimism until, I don't know, they go 3-and-out on their first drive coming up on Sunday or something like that. But for college football, we have 1 week in the books, and for some teams like Iowa State and Kansas State, 2 weeks in the book. Who is the most, in your opinion, optimistic fan base in the SEC right now, and who is the most pessimistic in the SEC?
I think the most optimistic right now, probably, Tyler, is LSU. It's a change of scenery for this defense and Brian Kelly's, regime. This is the most momentum that they've had, beating Clemson in the other Death Valley. I think they're probably the most optimistic, the least optimistic right now. I don't know. There's still some delusion that runs through Starkville, but I think Mississippi State, there really is no hope in sight. Maybe Arkansas is up there too, but right now, ugly. I wouldn't say ugly win, but 34-17 at Southern Mississippi. So I don't know. Southern Miss again, Brett Favre, but
they looked better than Kentucky did. I'll give them that. And LSU, very strong possibility for the most optimistic. I would say a dark horse candidate for optimism. How about Tennessee?
Yeah,
right?
Most definitely.
Their entire offseason has been embroiled in controversy with the Nico trade, which is essentially what it was, and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people, including myself, were doubting how good they would be and how good Joey Aguilar would fit in that offense. And they came out and put on a show on Saturday against Syracuse. So I think they're viewing themselves a lot higher than maybe even the people in Knoxville expected them to be. So I got to imagine they're riding pretty high. And, as far as most pessimistic, could it be Alabama?
Most definitely, yeah.
This is rarefied air to see them get beat like that on national television. And look, it's week 1. All teams can improve as the season goes along, but I've never been so intrigued by a matchup with UL Monroe, an SEC team. Not that I think the Warhawks are going to beat Alabama, because they're definitely not. I just want to see the effort. I want to see, are y'all loafing? Are y'all jogging to plays? Show me you got your message after last week for me to even think you have a shot in the SEC this year.
Right, absolutely. And I think Alabama's been one of the most pessimistic fan bases, even when Saban was there, losing or having a close game. And, I don't know.
That was always the funny thing to me, is during the peak of the Saban era where they'd beat Arkansas by 7 points or something like that, and a 500 Arkansas team, and the Alabama fans would lose their mind, and Saban would go in his press conference hey, wins are hard in this league. Why don't y'all appreciate that a little bit more? And I feel like those same fans now are Coach was probably right. We probably should have appreciated that a little bit more.
Yeah, most definitely. It's the same fans that have been calling for DeBoer to be gone midway through, last year. It's I don't know, Tyler. They're always going to be pessimistic, and, hard times create strong men, and good times create weak men kind of thing.
I think it teaches you to enjoy the good times while they're here. Because even in a case like Alabama, where we never thought it would end, and again, I'm not saying the dynasty's over or something like that, but they are in a very uncomfortable spot before SEC play starts here in a couple weeks, that they're probably saying, man, I wish I would have enjoyed some of those victories we had back in the day and not just said, okay, it's another one, on to the next one. Talk to me when we have a national championship, because, again, you don't know when, if ever, you're going to get back to that.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And, right now going nowhere fast. You don't need a big win against UL Monroe, but, again, they need big wins there in Tuscaloosa to kind of keep the relevancy. Still a blue blood, most certainly, but, if it continues to go the way that they're going, I don't know how long DeBoer's going to be there, and I don't know if the next guy can, get this kid going.
They have a huge game on the road against Georgia at the end of the month. Both those teams coming off buys. That'll be their first game in conference play, because they play Wisconsin next week before the bye. That game, I think, decides the fate of Alabama this year. If they can go in there, be competitive, they don't have to win necessarily. If they can make that a game, say, okay, Alabama looks like they're back to Alabama. They got the message and all that kind of stuff. If they get run out of Sanford Stadium, then I think the pitchforks and the torches start to emerge in Tuscaloosa, convening on the DeBoer home.
Yeah, you're going to be hearing the church bells as the Alabama buses leave. Athens, I think, in that one, and it's going to be a long season in Tuscaloosa. Nonetheless, I think just based on what you saw in week 1, but we'll have to see. I think a very big potential to get run out of the building there in Sanford, because Georgia, talk about another sneaky optimism team. Nobody's been talking about Georgia.
Yeah, and again, they beat Marshall this past weekend. I don't know how much stock you put into that, but we'll find out more about them coming up in a couple weeks when they take on Tennessee. 2 hours in the book, 1 more hour to go. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Thursday on the Game. 2 o'clock on your Thursday afternoon. Welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's all right, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, along with you here on the game as we navigate you closer to another football weekend. And, of course, Carolina and SC State getting square off on Saturday night over at Williams-Brice Stadium, where, again, we expect to see hopefully a lot of faces that maybe we didn't get to see as much of in game number one. But one guy we did see quite a bit of in that first game was Oscar Attaway out of the backfield. Was it surprising to you that Attaway got the start against Virginia Tech this past weekend?
Oh, it was not. I think, based on what Attaway, was able to do last year as the number 2 back, and then also in that bowl game was enough to, earn him that starting nod and everything that he's been for this team as a leader, in the offseason and whatnot, certainly earned him that spot. I think Rasul Faison coming in, certainly bolsters the running back room a lot, but I think, Attaway is going to be your guy at least for this week, or for last week and for this week, too, as number 1 on the depth chart, too.
There's a level of trust with Attaway for what he was able to do a year ago, playing that second back role to Rocket Sanders, which he did perfectly fine with. And then when Sanders got, nicked up and couldn't play against like Akron and stuff like that, he stepped in and did a perfectly fine job, played in the bowl game as the lead back and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very safe option when you had all the uncertainty with Rasul Faison. And we heard as the camp went along, hey, Faison's still practicing. We're preparing like he's going to play, but maybe he wasn't getting as many reps as he would have if he knew for sure that he was going to play that entire time. So I guess it does make sense that Attaway got the bulk of the carries on Sunday, and then, Faison was able to come in more as the game went along and had probably the best run of the day with that 30-yarder after he made some guys miss on that one. But Attaway certainly doesn't seem like he's going to be giving up that starting spot as of right now, because both those guys had pretty comparable games on Sunday at the end of the day. Yesterday, Mike Shula, cut number 5 here, Dave. Shula talked about the heavy usage of Attaway in game number 1.
Yeah, he's been probably, and that group's a good group. I'll say that to start with. They worked hard and they played physical. They played really hard the other day, physical. And he's probably been the most consistent throughout, going back to day 1 of spring ball. And he's got a very, kind of a lunch pail mentality of just, being that steady force, whether or not it's, running the football, catching it, pass protecting. So, you kind of want guys like that. And again, it's not really ever dictated kind of, especially we talked about the running backs last week on how we're going to kind of substitute those guys. It's just kind of the game starts one way, and then sometimes you have certain plays for like Oscar, or maybe for Rasul or whoever, Isaiah, whoever. And then and then after that, we just kind of let it go. And the biggest thing for us is, hey, let's stay on the field so they all can kind of get into a groove. But he's been really good. He's been a steadying force.
So the question becomes to me, when you kind of look at this running back room, and it's probably not something that's going to get answered this upcoming weekend because you expect to just play a lot of guys. But as you get into conference play, how do you balance that consistency versus ability? Because I think you saw on that run by, Rasul Faison, the way he made guys miss. Again, he was known for forcing missed tackles last year at Utah State. Not that Oscar Attaway can't do those kind of things, but I think you saw more of that ability out of Rasul Faison. So it's like, okay, do you value that higher, or do you look at the guy that's just consistent when you do ask him to carry the ball or catch the ball like Oscar Attaway's been?
I think in the starting running back role, you kind of need, somebody who's as consistent. But as Trula said, they're going to rotate both guys in there, and, Faison capable of making guys miss. And I think Attaway's certainly capable of it too, when he can get out in the open field. But Faison, a little bit more likely. But I think Attaway's the perfect guy, as Trula mentioned, that lunch pail mentality to lead the group, right? To have Faison be the flashy back to go in, make some plays. It's a perfect role for him as well. And, I guess with all the leadership that Attaway's, doing for the rest of the offense, all following in behind 16, he's the guy that you want out there. And, the guy that provides the most consistency is the guy that you want. But 2 really good fresh backs too, with Faison with his limited availability.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to exist the possibility that at some point one of those guys just has this breakout game where they run for $110 and 2 touchdowns. Then it kind of becomes okay, well, there's probably your guy going forward. But as long as they're kind of on equal footing, I could see this balance of distribution probably staying the same between the two again until somebody just outright says, hey, this is my job, I'm taking it, and the other guys' carries start getting limited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you saw really good things from both those running backs in the first game too. I think both of them, you saw some breakout runs, but then you also saw some runs where could have used a little bit more patience following your blocks, getting between the tackles a little bit more. But I think really good sign, and that's what you want early on in this year as those guys jostle for position. You don't want either one of them taking the run of the carries and taking the bumps and bruises early on. You need both those guys down the stretch.
Yeah, and with this weekend's game, again, we expect to see a lot of the running backs get some carries this weekend. I'm so intrigued by Isaiah Augustov because, last year at Colorado, offensive line wasn't great. Shedeur Sanders was kind of the more featured part of that run game, so I don't think we fully understand what exactly Augustov is. And again, he was brought in kind of almost as a safety net in case the Faison thing didn't end up working out as far as his eligibility. But now we still have him as an option, and I was kind of surprised he didn't get a carry on Saturday. I know he was on the field and played some, or on Sunday, excuse me. I know he's on the field and played some, but we heard a lot of good things from camp. I mean, he had the longest, most explosive camp run, according to Beamer, in one of their scrimmages that went for a touchdown. So I just kind of expected he was going to get some kind of feature part on Sunday in the game plan. Didn't really happen. But again, Saturday's an opportunity for, again, everybody to hopefully get some time out there and get some carries as we kind of piece together what this running back room is going to look like as you get into the meat of your schedule.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. I'm looking forward to seeing Jawarn Howell again with a quote-unquote revenge game. It's good for him to see his old team at SC State. But again, as you mentioned earlier, I'm sure a lot of those guys, at SC State, when they saw the way that he played against South Carolina before he transferred, we're happy for him to get to the next level of football. So quote-unquote revenge game, good for him to see, his old school. But then also Isaiah Augustov will get a more of an understanding of, is he, everything that, Colorado saw in him, or, what are you getting here? And then I'm also interested to see Matthew Fuller, guy a lot of people have talked about for a while. And I think, this is a big opportunity for Fuller to make a name for himself, especially in the red zone.
And I think you're in a good situation where you have so many guys in your running back room. They're like, okay, I see all these guys' upside potential, and unfortunately there's only so many carries to go around, as opposed to, I'd say, a couple years ago where you just quite frankly didn't have enough quality running backs. And again, Dakereon Joyner tried his hardest, but he was not a natural running back, and that experiment just ultimately didn't end up working out. You had Mario Anderson, Juju McDowell was in there before he got hurt and all that kind of stuff. But you just felt like that room was not as deep as you're dealing with, this past year or this current year at South Carolina. So, again, it's a good problem to have where you feel like you have so many guys that you think can factor in. You just got to find out where they can get their carries and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at the helm of it, you've got two experienced guys leading up the next generation of running back. You hopefully you don't have to go into the portal. You might have to fill some depth again next year, but hopefully you have two guys capable of taking over the room. And, again, Attaway and Faison setting the foundation here. And, two SEC quality backs too.
And that's the thing to remember is both those guys will be out of eligibility after this year.
Right, exactly.
I'd be willing to bet you can't find an older running back tandem than Attaway and Faison in the country, because both those guys, I think Faison will be 25 later on this year if he's not already, or one of those two guys turns 25 coming up here in a couple months. But yes, an older pairing, an experienced pairing, which is great. But again, similar in the way that we talk about quarterback, where this weekend can maybe give you a glimpse into your future at that position like it did with Sellers a couple years ago against Furman. You can also get a little bit of a glimpse in what the future of your running back room is going to look like as well, saying, okay, I don't know, I think Isaiah Augustov's got a couple more years left, but him or Jawarn Howell or Matthew Fuller or one of those guys going to kind of be the leaders of that next group once Faison and Attaway are done here. And again, this weekend, just seeing all those guys getting carries could kind of start piecing together what that looks like, down the road.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, I think, it'll be interesting to see the future if they're going to need to go into the portal for another back, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I've been hearing a lot of good things about Matthew Fuller, even though we haven't seen it. He's been the talk of, kind of the next generation of running back, so we'll see if he can show it here against SC State, if he gets the opportunity, if he can live up to it, or, they might have to go into the portal. I think we'll get somewhat of an answer.
And again, that's on down the road. We got an entire season of football to play, but I think you're in a good spot. And again, the running situation on Sunday wasn't perfect, and there was obviously not a ton of holes to run through on Sunday, going up against that Virginia Tech defense. And VT could be like the best run defense in the ACC. We don't know.
Yeah.
They changed so much in the offseason with portal guys and stuff like that. I don't want to say definitive, that wasn't a very good defense you're going against, because they could end up being really, really good. But certainly if you can get these guys more lanes to run through, particularly up the middle, hopefully you'll see more success there, and the running game can be something that you rely on, which you were able to do last year. I mean, you had a solid running game in the SEC. wasn't the best, but it was one of the better ones.
Right.
And you obviously saw what the offense was able to do because of that, and you hope for the same thing this year.
You got to be able to run the football in the SEC. It's one of the, I guess, pillars of finding success in this league. And so, having the two guys, Attaway and Faison, it just, again, it's a lot to throw at teams. It makes your running back room multi-dimensional. And then again, the most value behind it is that, you have multiple guys in a position that gets bumped and bruised a lot. Like, one of the more, injury-prone positions in football is a running back taking all those hits. Like, to have two guys in there that are both capable of doing similar things, it's huge because you're going to need them both down the stretch.
Well, and it's not just your ability to run with the ball; it's your ability to catch out of the backfield and pass protect as well. And that's something that's such an underrated aspect of being a running back. Is, hey, if we need you to chip a guy coming off the edge, can you do that to protect Lenore Sellers and buy him more time in the pocket and stuff like that? And I feel like we only talk about that when when it goes wrong,
right,
and somebody, hey, that guy blew that block and so-and-so got to Sellers or whatever it may be. I remember on the opposite side of that, when Rattler threw the touchdown pass to Leggett against Kentucky 2 years ago, we raved about DJ Braswell throwing that block against the defender to give Rattler that time to make that throw. So, yeah, kind of an unsung hero type of role a lot of the times, but very vital, especially as you're figuring out your offensive line and how good they're going to be. Make sure your tight ends, your running backs, and all that kind of stuff play that role when it comes to blocking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something, Attaway, as soon as he got here, when we were doing the initial introductions or the media session with the transfers, Attaway was like, he's like, I know the only way I'm going to get on the field is, or the way where it starts is by blocking, because, you're going to have a really good quarterback here in 16. And so, if he's a protected man, like you're going to see the field, and if he feels comfortable with you blocking in front of him, you're going to see the field. And I think Attaway's done a good job of that. Faison certainly too. I think we'll see a lot more. He had one of the better pass block grades out of anybody from the PFF numbers from the weekend. So both guys capable of doing it. And that's the MO, Tyler, is keep 16 protected.
We'll see how deep they go at the running back spot coming up this weekend against SC State. We talked about a lot of coach beef yesterday, and well, there's more beef between a current coach and a retired head coach that's reignited the rivalry from a couple years ago. We'll dive into that coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's all right, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, hanging out with you on your Thursday here on the game. Coming up at 2:30, we'll let you listen to our conversation we had earlier today with SEC Network analyst and USC alum Alyssa Lang from the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour as we get her thoughts on South Carolina's win over VT, as well as some other things happening around the SEC as we head into week number 2. If you remember back in 2023, Ohio State and Notre Dame played each other. That game was in Notre Dame, was a hard-fought game all the way down to the end. And at the end of the game, Ryan Day looked directly at the camera and said, "I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now," in reference to Lou Holtz, a former Notre Dame head coach that had won a national championship, picking the team that he had coached at before to beat Ohio State. He also said Ohio State was soft, and Ryan Day clearly took exception to that. And if Ryan Day could go back, do you think he would say nothing after that instead? Because that kind of blew up in his face a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. Knowing Ryan Day, I'm sure he would probably go back and do the same thing. Probably word it differently. I'm sure he's been thinking about what he would have said differently since the incident, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't like. Yeah, it's Lou Holtz. He's a retired coach, and granted, it is Lou Holtz, right?
Yep.
Like he's won a lot, very influential, does a lot of public speaking and stuff like that. And if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, well, do it because he does. It's electric.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think Ryan. I wouldn't put it past Ryan Day. I mean, what's he got to like? Yes, it blew up in his face a little bit, but he's got other problems like TV screen grabs to worry about. Than
Piercing, questionable piercings, those kind of things.
Piercings, if you will. Right, exactly.
Well, Lou Holtz is continuing to poke the bear. Cut number 35, Dave. He was on Outkick yesterday, and despite the fact that Ohio State took down number 1 Texas at home this past weekend, Lou Holtz not impressed. That'd be 35, Lou Holtz.
But you remember me telling you, I don't think Ohio State's a great football team. I know the schedule is very, very good, but when you're at home and you're outgained by well over 100 yards, you just can't look at it and say, okay, we're great. We won the game. Everybody look, yeah, they are 1-0, and that's the objective they had going into that game. But they're not a great football team. I would not be overwhelmed about facing Ohio State, although I was surprised that they lost Knowles, their defensive coordinator. I thought there'd be a big drop-off on their defense, but Ohio State's defense played outstanding football. So I think we'll have to see how good Michigan is. We'll have to see how good other teams are. I don't know about Oklahoma. We'll find that out tonight or this weekend when they play Michigan. I think Michigan could be a very, very good football team. And one Lord knows, Michigan better not beat Ohio State again. I'm from Ohio. I coached there under Woody Hayes. We won the national championship. We scored late in the game. The winner was going to go play for the national championship, and Woody went for 2, and we won the game 50-14. They said to Woody, "Why'd you go for 2?" He said they wouldn't let me go for 3. You know, you have to be part of that rivalry. When you win, you get a little pair of gold pants, which signifies that you beat Michigan that year.
The one and only Lou Holtz, that voice, of course, recognizable across the board as he continues to throw shots at Ohio State. My question is, does Ryan Day respond this time?
Most definitely. I think Ryan Day's very, I mean, again, as I mentioned, I think he's got bigger fish to fry with screen grabs. But again, I think, this might be a way for him to kind of clear that air. I don't know, though. It was, a pretty big distraction along with that football team. But I don't know. I mean, that team went on to do big things. But, again, still losing to Michigan. Lou Holtz is at the point, college coaches are enough of politicians as it is. So when you take a retired one as successful as Lou Holtz and as good of a public speaker, he's been public speaking for years now.
Sure.
So he knows exactly what he's doing. So you throw a microphone in his face and ask him about Ryan Day, I doubt he's going to say anything positive.
Nick is on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, wants to talk about Lou Holtz. Nick, appreciate your call. What do you have to say about Coach?
You know what? Lou Holtz is Lou Holtz. I think you guys made it. Sometimes he says a lot that he probably regrets as well, just the way coaches are. I don't blame Ryan Day. I think he had so many people down on him, and then for Lou Holtz to say what he said about his team, I think if you asked Dabo Sweeney or anybody else, they would have defended their team just as well. So I don't blame Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day is a great coach. I think he's proven himself. Yeah, he hasn't beaten Michigan like he's probably expected to, but I would, even though a lot of people would deny this, but I would take a national championship over beating Michigan, just the way it goes. I'm from Ohio. I know what that means, trust me. But I don't blame Ryan Day one bit for defending his team the way he did against the comments Lou Holtz made. So just my feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the call. 803-404-6100. And I almost wonder if there's an element of the fact that Ryan Day responded in the way that he did 2 years ago, that Lou Holtz knows, I can get under this guy's skin real easily, because I don't think he was directing when Lou Holtz said, hey, I think Notre Dame's going to win. I think Ohio State's soft. I don't think he was directly shooting at Ryan Day. He was just talking about the team in general. Ryan Day took exception to it, which he's the head coach. You would expect him to. But I think there's the element of, hey, now I know when I talk about Ohio State or Ryan Day, I can get under his skin. So I almost wonder if he's expecting something now.
Right, yeah, I would think so. And again, yeah, shout out to Ryan Day for standing up for his team there. But, yeah, I think – I don't know. Does he do it again this time? I don't know, because of the circus that kind of came with it. And Lou Holtz certainly knows what he's getting, and able to, get a rouse out of Ryan Day. And, he's certainly dealt with all the criticisms, the talk of him being born on third base. I'm sure he's seen it, heard it, and probably just done with all the talk around it. So, yeah, he's going to, stand up for his team for one, but also stand up for himself.
Well, fortunately for Ryan Day, their next two opponents are Grambling and Ohio. So he's not exactly going to be any high-profile matchups for the next couple weeks where this comment can directly influence what he's going to say after the game. They'll get into conference play in a couple weeks, and maybe something comes to that then. But he shouldn't have anything to say after beating Grambling or Ohio.
Right, yeah, and timing's a big thing, too, because he'll probably get asked about it, and he'll be like, well, look what we just did against either of those two teams. That's how you handle the tune-up weeks and all that. And I don't know, time and a place for everything.
I also feel like now that you have a national championship in your back pocket, where it's like...
Over Notre Dame.
Yeah, over Notre Dame, nonetheless. I feel like that can make you not as bothered by those kind of things. Now, like... He was critical of me. I still went on to win a national championship. I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know. There's still the talk of him being born on third base and not necessarily knowing it. But so I don't know if that's getting to him at all either. And really, he did tap in the putt, too. Yes, he was born on third base, but they won the national championship.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that he just took over a program that was already in a good place when Urban Meyer stepped down. So he's not going to have the opportunity to prove that he can build something from the ground up as long as he stays at Ohio State, which, hey, they're paying you a lot of money. You're winning. You've got great players. You've got great resources. I wouldn't leave if I were him. So we may never know if Ryan Day can build a foundational program from the ground up, but maybe he doesn't have to.
No, absolutely. And he showed he was a good coach. Still needs to beat Michigan, though. If he doesn't
that's
beat
the big
Michigan,
thing. Got to beat Michigan.
If he doesn't beat Michigan this year, and say they lose, if they don't win winning the national championship has been Ryan Day's way of being I don't have to beat Michigan. He might.
You still got to beat that team up north.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So if they don't win the national, if they lose to Michigan again and don't win the national championship, people are going to be calling for his job.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens there. We'll get into our conversation with Alyssa Lang from earlier on in the day from the SEC Network coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along on your Thursday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you here on your Thursday. We head out to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines and welcome in a former Gamecock alum, former member of the Gamecock Central staff, and currently on the SEC Network, of course, Alyssa Lang. Alyssa, appreciate you joining us this morning. I got to imagine it's probably pretty fun around the office and the station when the Gamecocks are good, especially now that we can say that they are a top 10 team once again.
Yeah, it's fun for me, certainly. Thank y'all for having me. I actually was just telling some of my colleagues last night as we were getting ready for our show and putting everything together that if this continues, prepare for me to be insufferable. And I know they all are taking me completely seriously when it comes to that. I can't remember being this excited for Carolina football since, honestly, I was in school when we had the great years of Jadeveon Clowney and Connor Shaw, and of course Steve Spurrier in the last few years of his career. So it's definitely a lot of fun right now to be a Gamecock in SEC country.
Hey, Alyssa, it's Chris. Thanks for coming on with us today. So let's start here. The South Carolina-Virginia Tech game for you, kind of a little extra special. Not only the Gamecocks opening the season, but you got some family ties to Virginia Tech. Know people who follow you on Twitter. At Alyssa Lang, saw you watching the game with some family this week. Tell us just how that was as you went through it.
Yeah, it's really honestly kind of bizarre when I think about my college football fandom and how it's sort of culminated in this 2025 South Carolina team. So both of my parents went to Virginia Tech. I was raised on Hokie football. We were in Blacksburg every weekend that I can remember throughout college football season, and then at times for college basketball when Tech was good. But I was raised on really some incredible college football in the late 90s, early 2000s with Frank Beamer. I told this story when Shane was hired, and I was a little embarrassed when I heard that Frank had actually heard the story. My childhood dog's name was Beamer. When I was 8 years old, and we got a dog, we named her Beamer after Frank. Like, that's how insane fans we were. And fast forward, I end up going to South Carolina, and we have love for that school as well. My dad kind of starts pulling for South Carolina, and then lo and behold, now Shane Beamer ends up at my alma mater, and I get to watch, quite frankly, one of my college football heroes in Frank wear Carolina gear in my school. And it's just the craziest full circle college football fandom that I could ever imagine. I joke that I cannot believe that Frank Beamer and his wife Cheryl watch the SEC Network and have seen me on TV before. 9-year-old Alyssa would be screaming about that. So yeah, it was bittersweet sort of watching the game on Sunday. I had no qualms about who I was pulling for, obviously. And I will say, my dad, though he wants Virginia Tech to return to the glory days and get back to where they were, he came out in the second half in a Carolina shirt because that's how much he loves Shane Beamer and the Beamer family. So he was pulling for both despite having the degree from Virginia Tech. So it was fun, and I'm very happy about the result at the end of the day.
Again, talking to Alyssa Lang of the SEC Network here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. And in that game, we saw a huge play from Nick Carver late with that touchdown, 99 yards and a score on the game. Should have had two, if we're being honest, with that one that got taken away. But I saw y'all were talking to him earlier on this morning on SEC Now, and I'm sure that's not the first time you spoke to him. Very impressive kid, very confident, and we're now finally starting to see him emerge as the wide receiver we hoped he would be when he got on campus a couple years ago.
Yeah, and you used the word finally. It's true, and that's why I asked him, one of the questions that I asked him in that interview, which was, hey, there's so many people who don't really know what this journey has been like for you and don't really know where you were as far as not having played the wide receiver position when you got to school and truly, in a sense, having to learn how to be a receiver. And it has taken a little bit, right? Like, you talk about expectations, and when a guy like that gets off the bus and is making the Feldman Freaks list and is what he is on the college football video game, of course people are going to expect him to contribute right away. And the first few seasons weren't necessarily what we all hoped they would be. But to start the game early with a catch and then, like you said, a touchdown, should have been two. Yes, I think we all fully agree with you. This could finally be the Nick Harbor, as I tweeted, video game season that we've all been waiting for. So it had to be as well, right? I mean, you look at what this team brings back offensively, and outside of everything South Carolina lost on defense, that was the question that everyone has been asking me, asking on television, is who's going to catch the footballs from Lenora Sellers? If Nick Harbor's not rounded into form, yeah, we saw flashes from Mazeo Bennett a season ago, but obviously that's a young room with some relatively new names from a national landscape. So seeing what we saw from Nick Harbor game one gives me so much more confidence than I have ever seen from him, from this young offense going into the rest of the season. I just hope they can keep it up and continue to build on that.
So one of the other things that you dropped on social media, Alyssa, was the power rankings for yourself and for your colleagues at the SEC Network. So Dari, Ben Watson, Chris Doring, of course, that crew over there, y'all do a great job. You and Ben Watson both have the Gamecocks sitting at number 3 in the conference out of 16 teams, of course. LSU, Georgia, you guys agree right now are the top 2, but South Carolina in the top 3. I know you've had to justify your rankings. So what have you seen just conference-wide that has South Carolina up there, and what do you see in just in general week 1 through the conference?
Yeah, thank you for saying that Benjamin Watson also has South Carolina at number 3, because the social media comments, you would think that I'm the only one that has South Carolina at number 3, which is fine. I knew I was going to get some accusations of bias there. It's okay. It's an impossible exercise, let's be honest, to rank 16 teams through week 1, especially knowing what those matchups look like, right? Texas goes on the road to Ohio State, defending national champions, and then you've got a team like I had on Saturday, Kentucky taking on Toledo, and they barely scrape out a win against a Toledo team. So I said this last night on the show. These are all just purely based off of week 1 games that we still don't really feel super sure about. And I'm pretty confident in saying that I think my teams ranked at 7 through 16 could honestly plug and play anywhere, and you could make an argument for any of those placements. Why I put South Carolina at number 3, obviously the caliber of the opponent, and I'm not saying that Virginia Tech's a team that, we're screaming and shouting out of the ACC is going to go make the playoff or win a national championship, but looking at the fact that it was a neutral site, it's an emotional game, it's a Virginia Tech team that should have been better this season, that for me carries a bit more weight than some of the other matchups. Outside of that, especially when I look at the top 5, I believe I went LSU 1, Georgia 2, South Carolina 3, Texas 4, A&M 5, and Tennessee 6, if I remember correctly. A lot of that for me is just based on quarterback. LSU and Georgia are those teams on paper that you can look at and go, okay, LSU, number 1 transfer portal class in the country. They go on the road to Clemson, gut out a tough win. They lean on their defense that they haven't been able to do in the last couple of seasons. To me, LSU, based on what I saw, I do believe right now is the argument or is the contender for number 1 team in the country. For Georgia, it's sort of the Kirby Smart effect, right? Like Kirby has reloaded, not rebuilt every single season. I liked what I saw from Gunnar Stockton. You hold Marshall to 0 points and under 100 yards through 3 quarters, knowing that you're getting 3 and 4 deep on that defense, that says a lot. Now, after that, for South Carolina, I would sit there and go, okay, the Texas fans, the A&M fans, the Tennessee fans that are screaming at me saying, no way, South Carolina's better, I would ask you, which quarterback would you rather have after week 1? I'm taking Lenora Sellers every single time based off of what we saw. So that alone was what put South Carolina top 3 for me, is knowing that, yes, Lenore's made some mistakes and there were some things we need to clean up, but that's the case for everybody during week 1. I saw enough to see that he has continued to develop from last season, the way he cut through some of those defenders like butter early in the game all the way until the end on that, 3rd and 13 in the 4th quarter. That was unbelievable for him to pick up a first down. That is all the argument I think I need to say, all right, switch quarterbacks then. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of rational people out there who are actually going to do it. I think people want Lenora Sellers.
Only about 90 seconds here before we have to hit a break. You have Alabama at number 10. You're not as low on them as Chris Doring is, but where is your panic meter in Tuscaloosa at right now?
Yeah, I mean, you have to put them there because you're not supposed to lose that game, right? Like, we have to be fair here in these rankings for what people showed us. If Alabama doesn't improve, the panic meter is going to get high. I was one of those people who was high on Alabama going into this season. I really thought the defense would take a step forward. They were missing some key pieces. Tim Keenan on the defensive side, Jam Miller on the offensive side. If they can clean that up, certainly next week against Wisconsin will be the next big-ish test. I'm not hitting panic yet, but we certainly need to start sweating a little bit if we see the lack of effort this upcoming weekend again against UL Monroe.
I was going to say UL Monroe famously beat them back in that bad 07 season, so got to watch out for the Warhawks too.
Their last unranked matchup loss at home was that 2007 game against Louisiana Monroe. They have not lost to an unranked team at home since. Could you imagine?
Oh, man, time is a flat circle sometimes. She is Alyssa Lang from the SC Network. We appreciate you taking your time. Know you're very, very busy, and we certainly enjoy watching you and your whole crew there on the network, and look forward to another fun weekend this weekend.
You guys are the best. Can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, rolls on as your Thursday continues here on the game. All right, wrapping things up here on your Thursday halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machica, Captain Dave. We're about to hand things over to Jay and Terry for the halftime show. Of course, again, tonight, NFL action with the Eagles and the Cowboys getting things rolling at 8:20. And we were just talking about this. You got Chargers and Chiefs tomorrow night, 8 o'clock on YouTube. I believe that's just straight up regular YouTube. You don't have to have like premium or YouTube TV. You just log on to YouTube and boom, there's Chargers and Chiefs as the NFL finds yet another streaming platform to get a game on. We're on Prime, we're on Netflix. Am I missing one? We're obviously regular TV, and now on just straight up YouTube.
Right. Eventually, it's all going to merge back into one, right? All the streaming.
Yeah, you would think. And then it just becomes cable again.
I was going to say, it's the life cycle of cable. But, no, I think we'll see a cable, too, if you will. But, I don't know.
It's going to be one of those things where it's like, this is going to be the most watched live broadcast of anything in YouTube history or something like that the NFL can tout. They did the promotional video with Mr. Beast yesterday where he had a bunch of YouTubers on NFL teams. So they're leaning into it.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And I don't know, this might be the most Gen Z thing about me, but I think YouTube ad-free is one of the most valuable subscriptions you can get.
See, I've never gotten it. And I am annoyed by the ads, but I've never bit the bullet and gone ad-free.
It's worth it. I'd say it's mostly because you're not paying for YouTube TV, right? That's a whole different package, whole different thing. But also, I don't know. It's like, you get, and YouTube content's usually shorter anyways, but I think having it ad-free, it's cheaper too. I think it's like $20 or $20 compared to a whole streaming service with, HBO Max and that kind of thing. But I think it's on the cheaper side if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. I think, because I tend to stream stand-up. There's a lot of good stand-up on YouTube and things like that. So.
Well, I'm sure they're going to do ridiculous numbers on YouTube coming up tomorrow night. You'll be able to see at the bottom, I'm assuming, where it says how many people are watching, like all YouTube videos. Speaking of numbers, by the way, we got the Nielsen results from over the weekend. Texas and Ohio State was the largest Week 1 audience ever. 16.6 million people watched the Buckeyes and the Longhorns on Big Noon Saturday.
That was a big win for Big Noon kickoff. I know they needed some momentum. I'm interested to see when the pregame show numbers come out. I would assume.
I think it was 3.5. Yeah, we have it on our crawl here. 3.5 million for College Game Day with Corso's final appearance.
Yeah, pretty good stuff for Corso's final appearance. I don't know if you're going to be able to replicate that nearly.
Oh, no. There was a lot of people like, hey, I haven't watched in a couple years, but I'll watch Corso's final one, and then I'm done with it. So they're still going to do good numbers, but you're never going to beat that.
Yeah. So now it turns to the question, do you think McAfee will do calling the dogs or something like that? Each team should chant, I guess, if you will, or something. I think that's the direction it goes.
I think now you end the show with the celebrities pick.
Right.
Because there was no celebrity picker last week because it was Corso's last one. But typically you do the celebrity and then you do Corso. So now I think the celebrity pick will kind of be the end of the show. Hey, so-and-so picked whatever team that he's supporting. I don't even know who the guest picker is this weekend for Oklahoma. Maybe it's Blake Shelton or something like that. I don't know. But, Blake Shelton picked the Oklahoma Sooners, and then, Reese Davis is like, okay, on to your noon kickoff or whatever. It's not you're not going to have anything that has the same pop as Corso's headgear. But, again, I think you just kind of lean more into the, guest picker pick more than anything else.
Definitely. I'm with you, Tyler. I think the guest picker might do I don't know. They're gonna do something like calling the dogs. That's natural. Georgia and whatnot. But yeah, I agree. Ending on the guest picker seems fitting, and you don't really have as much of a crescendo at the end of the show as you do with Corso and the headgear.
But again, I mean, we've been preparing for this for a while, and there have been episodes where there was no headgear pick, so it wasn't going to be something that was completely foreign at the end of the day. But we're going to get used to life without Lee Corso on the College Game Day set. And again, I typically have it on in the background just as I'm doing things on Saturday morning before the games get rolling. It's more just kind of hearing what people are saying as opposed to always sitting in front of the TV and watching. But 3.5 million for Corso's final show the other day.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Game day always going to be an institution, background noise, and helps you fill in some facts about some games, that you weren't maybe not have been following, some storylines, entering some games that you're probably going to watch anyway. So always fun, but and hat tip to Corso too, going perfect 6 for 6 on his picks. even though that included not my Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Speaking of ratings here, Virginia Tech and South Carolina on Sunday, 5.4 million viewers in that 3 o'clock window for that game on ESPN. Not quite as many as Notre Dame and Miami did, about double that later on that night on ABC, but still a really, really good viewership. And I believe that eclipses all of the games that Carolina had last year. I think their highest was like 4.5 maybe. So the most viewed game of the season so far, obviously, and that one's going to be a hard one to beat.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a big stage for South Carolina in week 1, and, certainly a lot more people now awake to Lenore's Sellers and the aliens that live, at the football facilities over there. But, again, big stage, and South Carolina got it done, and again, garnering all the momentum going into SC State and then Vandy here too.
Well, you won't be featured quite as heavily this weekend. You'll be on the SC Network Plus, and again, it's a game that isn't appointment TV for a lot of people outside of the South Carolina fandom. But once you get back into SEC play, or once you get into SEC play starting next week, night game against Vanderbilt, that'll be a fun matchup between Lenore Sellers and Diego Pavia. Then if there's going to be a Heisman campaign, that's what really gets rolling. Is okay, you got some challenges coming up, and then you get in that tough slate in October, and hopefully a lot of good games along the way there.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And again, we'll see what happens this weekend. The home opener, it's fun that this game is at night. You're thankful for. I'm sure everyone going to this game is thankful. The sun will get out of the way. It's supposed to be pretty hot. But again, the home opener is always a fun one to see what Justin King, Jeremiah Donati, and everybody over there in athletics have cooked up for the atmosphere.
By the way, we can confirm painted end zones and palmetto trees now, as we kind of expect we're going to happen. The official Twitter account has put that out today.
Garnet colored end zones. I like it. I'm with it. Adds to the aesthetic. And again, I'm sure it's going to be a scene over there at Williams-Brice again for the home opener. 7 o'clock night kicks at Williams-Brice are always a movie. So, it'll be interesting to see what the creative media team's cooked up.
Going to be a fun one over there for sure. We appreciate you filling in for us this week once again, Joe.
Yeah, anytime, Tyler. Again, like I said, it's always fun for me to come up in here. It's sports media or sports radio kid my whole life. So, yeah, it's a blast as always.
I'm sure we're going to be calling on you again sometime next week as well. So enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you then.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Everybody enjoy the slate of college football this weekend. Appreciate you having me.
That'll do it for the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Coming up next, it's post-game show with Jay and Terry on your Thursday on the Game.